Let's quickly read Daniel 10. I won't base a lot on this text, but it does reveal, at least through Daniel, what else was going on that we see. So let's quickly read it. In the third year of... Sorry, if the kids are all going to Sunday school? They're gone? Sweet. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, just for jazz. All right. So in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel. So this guy's about 80 years of age now, Daniel. Thank God, that means your ministry's not over when you hit 80, is that right? Because Daniel's still going. So here we go. The message was called Belshazzar. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood the message and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks, so he's 21 days. I ate no pleasant food, no meat or wine came into my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. Now on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face was like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms, feet like burnished bronze in colour, and the sound of his words like the voice of the multitude. Don't just think this is Jesus. The 4 beings around the throne also have attributes in similar, so don't just think that's Jesus. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision. So he's standing in the midst here of something, but a great terror fell upon me, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone when I saw this great vision, and no strength remained in me, for my vigour was turned to frailty in me, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for I have been sent to you. And while he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, don't fear, Daniel, for from the first day you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. Which shows you that in a spiritual sense, the will of God gets done, but there are inhibitors to it, like an electrical current that goes through, and what do they call those things that diminish the current on the resistor. There we go. That's exactly, what a word. That's exactly what's going on here. He says, yeah, that's right, Trish. What a man, what a man, what a mighty, mighty good man. Say it again now. Here we have the will of God. From day one, Daniel prays. And 21 days later, he says, listen, I just got here. And he begins to tell us why that's the case. Okay, and here we go. When he had spoken such words to me, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless, and suddenly, having the likeness of the sons of men touched my lips, he opened my mouth and spoke. Oh, sorry, I missed a verse, didn't I? Do not fear. Yeah, verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia. Let me write that term up. That will become important as we go. The prince. Verse 13. The Prince of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, so he's fighting 21 days. That's how you know God sends him day one. But he fights this guy. Prince of Persia is fighting this guy 21 days. And behold, Michael, who is the angel that is designated for Israel, okay? So he stands, and one of the chief princes came to help me. So when you look at that being with all the lightning and all that sort of stuff, it's not Jesus, because someone comes to help this guy. Jesus doesn't need help, okay? So there are beings at play here that are beyond comprehension at this stage, okay? They're outside of our realm. And one of the chief princes came to help me, for I'd been left alone here with the king of Persia. Now I've come to make you understand what will happen to the people, to your people. Who's Daniel's people? This is the lens of Israel. In the latter days. For the vision refers to many days yet to come. And when he had spoken such words to me, I turned my face towards the ground and became speechless. And suddenly one having the likeness of the sons of men touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke, saying to him, who stood before me? Sorry, you got my timer going, Lee? Thank you. Thanks, mate. My Lord, because of the vision, my sorrows have overwhelmed me, and I have retained no strength. For how can this servant of my Lord talk with you, my Lord? As for me, no strength remains in me now, nor is any breath left in me. Then again, the one having the likeness of the man touched me and strengthened me, and he said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be to you. Be strong. Yes, be strong. So when he spoke to me, I was strengthened, and said, let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. We can be supernaturally strengthened. You can strengthen yourself in the Lord, okay? Through these types of things. So we'll go through some of this. Then he said, do you know why I've come to you? And now I must return to fight with the Prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed the Prince of Greece will come. That was to happen 150 years later. But it shows you in heaven, where time is obliterated, the sequence of events comes. The time is out of whack, but the sequence is there, okay? And so, go forth, the Prince of Greece will come, but I tell you the truth. I tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds against these except Michael, your prince. Okay, let's start our thing. Now, when we go through this, these are unseen things. If you do disagree with me with this, no problems. We'll sit down and have a yarn later, no dramas. These are unseen realms, okay? I'm simply going to share with you what I think the scripture clearly denotes. You can say no, yes, whatever. I don't really care. You know what I mean? It's not going to affect you one way or another. But what I will say in this area, there are miles of misconceptions that reign in this area. So we need to weed out the wheat from the chaff and see clearly what is going on behind the veil. One of the things that we note when we're talking at least of angels, let's have another turn up there, and we put angels up here. We know this, that for sure, angels don't have wings. Okay? You say, Paul, you're already gone off track, because I know that on the top of the Ark of the Covenant, there were angels with wings. Yes, but they're cherubim. And seraphim also have wings. But angels do not have wings. You see time and time again where angels come. They came to Abraham. They came to Lot. They are men. They look in the form of men. The angel of the Lord comes and wrestles with Jacob. Men. Okay? So, furthermore, the New Testament says this. Be hospitable, and has a very, very weird reason why. Is that right? Because you may entertain angels unawares. That should tell you one thing right from the get-go, that the realm that we live in is not the only realm, and at some point these two realms can intersect. Okay? You can have angels sit and have lunch with you. The angels that came to Abraham, they prepared a meal for. Strange that it wasn't a kosher meal though, hey? Shows you that he's the God of the Gentile and the Jew. Okay? Abraham is the father of all who believe. He didn't go and say, okay, well, let's get some kosher. Oh, there's no pig for him. They prepare a meal that's not kosher. But we see here realms intersecting that are not our realm. Therefore, it's no surprise. Have you got troubles? Have you got forces that come against you? I know in my own life and feel when forces come against you. You know everything is going wrong at the one time. Everything is falling apart. You're feeling oppression. Has anyone been there? If you're a Christian, you will have experienced that. If you're a bad Christian, everything will go well for you. Because the devil's quite happy to leave you alone. Because you're no danger, no threat at all to him. You want to do something for Jesus, you will be swimming upstream. Don't think it's funny that you incur all these tribulations, as Jesus said. Is that right? If you're in love with Jesus, you're going to have, you will have, the Bible says, tribulation in this world. Why? Because we are assassins in a foreign land. We are marked, and he knows we are marked. We are not citizens of this world, but our citizenships, our passports have been stamped already, guaranteed for the next. And so the Lord knows those who are his, but the devil does also, and his authorities, which we'll go through. Okay, here's another thing that maybe we turn to it just because time's not an issue. I'm going to stop in 40 minutes, so I'll take my time with these things. But we'll go to Matthew chapter 18, I think it is. Let's have a look. It'll be somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure it's in the middle there, only because I did my readings this week, somewhere around there. Okay, yes, this is the chapter, and it's verse 10. Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, talking of children. For I say to you that in heaven, in a separate realm, their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. Mark my words. Biden tries to put a slight on these little ones. You watch what happens to Biden. Because their angels stand in heaven before the Father always. And it tells you, have you got children? We know at the very least, they have angels that stand before the Father in heaven. Jesus tells us so. It's red letter. This is the words of Jesus. A bit spooky, isn't it? But this is reality. God is interested in your children. And he's also interested, by the way, in his children, which means you may have a guardian angel. That's a stretch, but I don't think it's much of a stretch. If we're ambassadors of Christ in a foreign land, wouldn't it be normal to send a security brigade to make sure that your ambassador is safe? And so I don't think it's beyond the stretch of a. It is a stretch, like I say. Don't believe it. Don't take it on board. But your children definitely have one. Jesus said so. So if you're going to clock them one, make sure that you're on good landing. Then you do it in the right way. Not that there is a right way, because we all go to jail for smacking kids these days. Okay. Also, we notice this. This is important. Let's go to 1 Peter. This will become important in our discussion that we're going to next. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3. You wonder why you feel so like you're fighting against this stuff, that why isn't life easy? How come it's like this? Well, this should be opening your eyes as to why it's like this. That's why I come prepared to meetings where I know I'll be giving a salvation message. I make sure I have everything in printed copy, because these things will play up, the sound will go off, the music will be terrible, it'll be as flat as a tack. Because why? Because you know that people are there to make sure they don't give their lives to Jesus Christ. Okay? It's not just, I know people are so blasé about this stuff. Oh yeah, we'll just get up and do it, as if in the flesh you can do these things. Daniel sees a man and his breath goes out of him. He falls on his face to the floor. How are you going to arrogantly break through all that? Two different realms, two different sets of powers, and we think that we're going to do it ourselves. What a joke. What a joke. Here we go. 1 Peter. This is consistent New Testament teaching. He says, Who is gone into heaven and is on the right hand of God? Angels and authorities and powers. Let's write those down. Angels and authorities and powers. Sorry, didn't I tell you the scripture properly? It's 1 Peter 3:22. That works better. Let's read that again. Who is gone into heaven is on the right hand of God. Angels and authorities and powers being made subject unto him. Jesus saying, they're subject unto me. Let's go to Romans 8. Romans chapter 8. We see a recurring thing of this. Romans 8:38. And it says these words, for I am persuaded that neither death nor life, angels, what's the next one? Same word, isn't it?
Angels and principalities.
No, authorities and principalities. And then we go to powers, same thing coming up here. Okay, nor things things to come. But in both cases, at least three hierarchies or three divisions here are exposed. Here's another term that we need to look at, because otherwise you will not understand some scriptures. Does anyone know the term Elohim? What does it mean? That's probably the right response, by the way, where you have a little murmuring and you're not quite sure. That is probably the right response. Let's have a look at an interesting verse, Psalm 82. Psalm 82. How long have I got to go there, Lee? To go. Oh, that's great. Okay, that's good. All right, Psalm 82. Let's just read verse 1, and it says, God stands in the assembly or the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the gods. What's wrong with that verse? What's wrong with that verse is this. If it didn't trouble you, you weren't listening.
God.
It says here that God is standing and judges among the gods. The problem with that verse is one thing. The word Elohim applies to both. See, we're used to Elohim from Genesis. And we say, look, plural God, 3 in 1. Im being the plural in the Hebrew language. So we say, from Genesis, see, let us make man in his image. And I am Trinitarian. Okay, it's a foundational doctrine. We're not going away here, but you cannot get away from the fact. Go on the Blue Letter Bible, have a look at this verse, and you will say, it'll read like this. Elohim stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the Elohim. So we have a problem. That's Psalm 82 verse 1. We have a problem, Elohim, Elohim. Only though in the sense that we say Elohim applies to capital G-O-D, and then we start assigning attributes of Elohim. But I want to show you now, Elohim applies to all sorts of beings. Let's have a quick look. Let's go to 1 Samuel. We'll know the story. 1 Samuel. And in 1 Samuel 28, which is right towards the end of 1 Samuel, and we're going to read verse 12. And it says, this is Saul going to the witch, which was supposedly all banned from Israel, but he managed to find one. Because he couldn't hear from the Lord, so he went to the tarot reader. Here she comes. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, why have you deceived me? For you are Saul. So somehow there's information that has been given to her from this other realm, as she calls this one up from there. I'll just say this in this regard, make some of you uncomfortable, but in the Old Testament you will find many commandments saying, don't try and talk to the dead. Now, if I put a commandment in my Bible and said, don't fly to the moon, you'd be quite comfortable with that commandment because it cannot possibly be done. But the fact that there is a commandment there tells you that it is possible to commune with the dead. God keeps you from it because you don't know what you're getting on that side of the fence, okay? So just be wary of that. People who say, oh, this is all hocus pocus rubbish. No, why would God put a commandment to say, don't speak to the dead, don't call up the people? You know, when your auntie passes, don't try and have a conversation with her 2 days after. Because it's not her. I can tell you that for starters. We don't have time to go through it. But I will say that he doesn't give a command if it's not possible to do that command. He tells you, don't do it. Don't be like the heathen that do that. Simon in the New Testament, who was able to foretell certain things, he made money from it. Well, mate, you can only be a lucky gambler so far. The fact that the TAB is still standing, that Sportsbet's still standing, the Crown Casino is still standing, tells you that the odds are in favour of them. So how is Simon making money consistently if he doesn't have some sort of powers? You understand what I'm saying? So we can't discount that realm either. Here we go. Sorry, I'm off track already. Verse 13. And the king said to her, do not be afraid. What did you see? And the woman said to Saul, I saw a spirit ascending out of the earth. But if you read that passage, it says, I saw Elohim ascending out of the earth. Therefore, we say this. Elohim can at least apply to disembodied spirits, because that's what he saw. That's what they saw. Is that right? They peeked into the other realm, and when they saw this coming through. Elohim. Okay. Then we have another one. Then we go to Genesis 6. Let's go to Genesis 6. Some of you will be more than familiar with this passage, but let's go through it for those who are not. 6 and verse 2. And it says, now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they choose. That term there, sons of God, that should trouble you as well. But the term is Elohim, the sons of God. Jude throws more light on it. Let's go to Jude, just before the book of Revelation. Okay, Revelation, let's go there. I think it's Jude 6, could be 5 and 6, maybe 6. And it tells us here who these people are, okay? It says, the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Therefore, these people, let's put another term in here, because Genesis 6 is really about, according to Jude, fallen angels. The term is Elohim. Let's have another look in the book of Genesis. Keep going while we're there. 31. Genesis 31. We'll hit a couple just because some of you will be starting to worry about me already. 31:30. And it says these words. It says, and now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods, little g? And the word there is, have a guess? Have a guess? Elohim. There you go. Let's go to Genesis 35, just so we can cap this off. Then we keep moving. 35 and verse 2. And it says, then, and Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods, just in case you're in any doubt, the foreign gods that are among you. Purify yourself and change your garments. So we have Elohim that applies to false gods. We have, here's another one. Let's go to Exodus just to nail it, because we just want to get this down so that people don't think I'm heretical. Here we go, 23:32. 23:32 says this, you shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. Elohim is therefore applied in the text, there's no escaping it, to false gods, disembodied spirits, sons of God, and fallen angels. Most of the time, in fact thousands of times, Elohim is spoken of as God, capital G. But when you read in the Old Testament, the term that is applied to God is called the Most High God, is what's applied. Okay? And so what Elohim is a term for anybody that lives in this other realm. Anybody that's in there. Like we'd be earth dwellers, they'd be Elohim. So we know where our origin is. We're supposed to live on earth. Despite what the scientists are saying, we'll go to Mars, live on the moon. No, they're not fit for us. The earth is for us. Those that live in the other realm are called Elohim. They can be anything in here, in those categories that we spoke about, but they're called Elohim. It's just saying like a human being. You understand what the Bible's using as a term there. Therefore, when we come to passages in Job and things like that, where we come with the sons of God, it shouldn't be such a dramatic change for us if we see the word Elohim there, okay? It doesn't represent attributes. It's a designation. It's a spirit being, someone who belongs in the spirit world. Let's go back to Psalm 89. Let's go back to Psalm 89. Right, no, we went Psalm 82. Let's not go back. Let's go to Psalm 89. How's that? That's better. And we'll go just one verse in Psalm 89, and we'll go verse 7. God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the, what have you got in yours? Saints, what do you got? Saints. Yep, okay. There's also a term in there called holy ones. When we look at the term holy ones, the Old Testament favours this term, holy ones. We get to the New Testament, who are the holy ones? The saints. Where without holiness we will not see God, right? So the term becomes, in the Old Testament, we've got that. New Testament, we end up with the term, the translators could have just as easily put the term holy ones. They chose saints. To the saints at Ephesus, we write, you know what I mean? So they could have said to the holy ones at Ephesus, because it's taken that if you're a follower of Jesus, you will be a holy person. That might be a worry for some people, I don't know. Okay. So, holy ones, okay? And it says to the reverence of all them that are about him. So, here's an opening. There's some passages in the Old Testament that begin to open up. Our perception of what heaven looks like is a tradition. We see it in our little Bible drawings and things like that. That becomes our perception of what heaven looks like. When we read what's actually going on in heaven, we end up with a totally different view of what it looks like. So let's go to one passage, 1 Kings. I'm not going to unpack the theology of it, but it does show what's going on here. All right, so 1 Kings 22:19, it says, this verse, God has said it's time for Ahab to die. We've had enough of Ahab, Jezebel. It's time for him to go. Then, listen to what goes on though. And he said, hear you, therefore, the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne. And listen to this, all the host of heaven. Here's another term we're going to have to come to grips with. Okay. And the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on his manner, and another said on that manner. And there came forth a spirit who stood before the Lord, and he said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will put a lying spirit in the mouth of the prophets. And he said, You shall persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning you. This is a much more collaborative approach. God needs nobody. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me, despite what all the preachers are telling you. God's so in love with you, He needs you. He needs nothing. He's complete in Himself. He wants a family. Absolutely, He wants a family. Does He need you? No. Also, His leadership, He doesn't want to be a totalitarian ruler like we're getting in the West now. He doesn't want to be a Justin Trudeau. He wants to work in partnership. And in partnership with His sons is what He wants to work with. And so in heaven here, we have a collaborative approach. We have what you might call, that was in Psalm 82, the divine assembly. We have a divine council, a divine group of people that God will say, this is the plan, what do you think? That's what He's saying to Ahab, isn't He? You think God's just sitting there, it's done. No, this is time for Ahab to die. What do you reckon? And this spirit says this, and this spirit says that. You're right, Barry, go on, mate. And this spirit says that, and he says, okay, we're going to do that. And off we go. Isn't that a different approach to what you think is going on in heaven? That's what was going on in heaven back here. Also, we go to Psalm 82. Again, let's go back to there. Psalm 82. I can tell the place is getting deathly quiet. People are scratching, saying, Paul, what are you doing? Okay, 82. Let's have a look at this. 82 verse 6. And it says this, I said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Remember, gods, Most High, Elohim. But you shall die like men, and shall fall like one of the princes. And it goes on in Psalm 82 there. But we come, that should worry us, shouldn't it? Because in John 3:16 it says, For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Is that right? So who's lying? Have we got sons of God? We've got an only begotten Son. Surely if you've got an only begotten Son, you're the only one, aren't you? When the will's read, if you're the only begotten, you don't want people coming out of the woodwork. Here's the other sons of God. How do we reconcile these things? Well, we reconcile it by the pictures. God is looking, He's revealing to angels His plans and His purposes through what happens on earth and what He's recorded in His book. Angels long to look into these things. And so, how do we reconcile it? Only begotten means, that's how they translated it, but what it means is one of a kind. Right? Only begotten doesn't mean the only son. It means the only one of that kind. A unique Son of God. You say, has it happened before? Yes, it has. Okay? We've got baby, and he's going to be the father of many nations. But he goes to the fertility clinic, and they say, Abraham, you don't look like a good candidate. And Abraham thinks, time's ticking. We really don't have a lot, and God promised, so He's got to be faithful. So I know what I'll do. There's this little servant girl, we'll get over here, and we'll create what God wanted. Because after all, God's plans can't be thwarted. We've got to do it. So He creates Ishmael, is that right? But then when you get to the Akedah, when the picture of the crucifixion comes, and they begin to take Isaac up to sacrificing on the top there, God says, take your son, your only son. Isaac was the only son of promise. He has more sons, but there's only one of a kind. That's the one I promised. The rest of them are your sons. God doesn't hate Ishmael, he loves him. He said, I'll make you a prince and make many nations. We read the story. God's not against Ishmael. He wants to bless these sons. But there's only one that's one of a kind. And this is how we resolve it here. When we look in Colossians, Colossians is a great book. Get the Jehovah's Witnesses around. Just don't even bother. Don't get out of Colossians. Colossians is great. Okay, Philippians great too. So, but anyway, yeah, they're all nice together, so you won't get lost either. Colossians, here we go, 1. Let's have a look at Colossians 1:14. We know this, that he's one of a kind. It says this, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins, who is the image, or the express image in some translations, of the invisible God, Elohim, the firstborn of every creature. There's one for the Jehovah's. They say, see, that's Jesus. He's born, he's created, begotten. And then the next verse is a troubling one for them. For by him all things created, 2 realms that are in heaven. Keep going. That are in heaven and that are in earth. And if you missed the allusion here, he says the invisible and the visible. 2 realms that Jesus Christ has created. And everything that was created by him, okay? And it goes on, whether they be thrones, dominions, principalities, powers, all these things were created by him. And listen, for him. And he is before all these things. So before the visible and invisible were created, Jesus Christ was before these things. He stands apart from creation. So don't get sucked in by the JWs. He's to be, bow down and let's worship Jesus because he's the preeminent in creation. No, he's above creation. All things are held together by him and through him and by his word, okay? Therefore, we know that Jesus created from the heavenly realm, the invisible realm, he created Elohim. Because nothing was made that he didn't create. Okay? So that was created by him. Now let's go to Job. Job chapter 38. You want to be depressed? Read Job.
Wasn't that about Ecclesiastes?
Yeah, well that's not good either. But anyway, let's go here. Job 38. And verse 4, it says, this is Job, God challenging Job, right? He said, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. These are strong words coming from God, don't you think? Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Has sarcasm. God has a bit of sarcasm. Surely you know. You know what I mean? Job, you tell me, mate. You surely know, don't you? That's God speaking. How's that? Well, who stretched the line upon it? Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? And who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, right? And all the sons of God shouted for joy. The Elohim, the sons of God, we have creation. And before creation, we have the sons of God. We'll call them the Sogs. Before that, they must have existed because when it was created, they shouted for joy. Okay? So they're there before. So we know that realm is pre-existent to our realm. Right? It was created in a sequence. If you're looking at the typology, which one time I'll go through, but I do have it on my website, of the Genesis chapter 1, where he tells us right from the beginning, the whole plan of God, you have the waters above from the waters beneath. Okay, same thing splitting here. Okay, enough of that. All right, so also we say these heavenly stars that were in there, and the morning stars sang together. They are Elohim, heavenly beings, right? Think of the ancient world, how they would understand this. Where on earth, Abraham gets a promise. He says, your offspring is going to be like For the ancient world, if a star was in heaven, that's the heavenly realm. So they make the analogy of these heavenly beings being stars. Earthly beings, there's different meaning with Abraham. We are born of the Spirit, right? We're the seed that is from, we're born of heaven, born of God. So we are the seed from above, and Israel is the sand of the sea, you know what I mean? They're the two things that he said to Abraham. But from an ancient mindset, thinking of heavenly beings, it's not a stretch to say they reside in the heavens, they're stars. Plus, they look at the stars and the stars move. If anyone's done astronomy, wrong one. There's a bit of a gap between those two. But you do astronomy, you're going to see stars that move and wiggle. And they weren't dills, they knew this. So anything living moves. So they thought living beings. You know, that's how they would have thought in their thing. So, crucial to understanding what God's about and what his summation will be. All 3 minutes to go. Okay, we'll stop this when I get to the end of this comment, because then we go into exploring the rebellions of the Elohim. God has a council in heaven that he likes to bounce ideas off. Just the way that he works with you. You say, how can we do that? No, God has come to you and said, what do you think, Paul? What do you think, Anna? What do you think, Ian? You know what I mean? I'd like you to be more holy. Paul, what if you give this up? Why don't you just try it, Paul? Oh, I really don't want to do that, God. And we're having a conversation like I've got anything to say to God, you know what I mean? But God desires a family. And built into that assumption is this. He wants a family that loves him. So I don't know whether you're a Calvinist here, but put all your theology aside and say this. What if I could insert a card into the back of my wife's head that she would do whatever I told her to do, and she would tell me how great I was and how fantastic and what a sportsman I am and how sexy I look, and this would just be an ongoing worship. As I come home from work, she starts at the door licking my boots. So all I have to do, so all I got to do is insert this card in the back of her head. And look, I might enjoy that for the first, I was going to say a week or two, but maybe a month or 3, you know what I mean? But eventually, I know it's not real. It's not that she loves me. It's not that she thinks I'm sexy. It's not that she thinks I'm some sporting prowess out there or whatever it is I've programmed into her. That is not a real response. In order to have love, you've got to have the freedom to choose to love or to reject. Is that right? Otherwise, it's not love. I can force somebody to love me. If you're in a domestic violence arrangement, the wife will say all the right things. She doesn't love you. She's afraid of you. But you can beat it out of her. And she'll do what she's told by the time you're finished with her. But that's not love, and that's not God. God wants a family that loves him, and in order to get a family that loves him, you must have freedom of choice. Does that make sense? I'm not getting into Calvinism and predestination and all this sort of stuff. I'm simply saying if you want to love somebody, you have to freely choose them. And therefore, God has a heavenly family and an earthly family that he made, that he wanted to love him. And he wanted to love them. Think of it in this way. God put it inside the heart of every father and every mother that you want to reproduce after your own kind, and you want to love your children, and you want your children to love you. And what a tragedy it is when couples can't reproduce. It's like an emptiness. And if you're in that thing, I would get prayer. I know a number of couples who have been prayed for, who the doctor said they cannot have children, and have 6 children today. They should have known when to stop. I mean, be fruitful and multiply, that's fine, but that's crazy, you know. But anyway, says a man who has 4 of them. But anyway, this is the plan of God. We're going to stop here. The plan of God is this. He creates a place called Eden. And in Eden, we think here's Adam and Eve bouncing around. Well, maybe not bouncing, you know what I mean? No clothes. So maybe sauntering through this little jungle. You know what I mean? All good. This is what we think. It's empty. It's just man in there. No, it's not. No, it's not. God created Eden as a place where his heavenly family and his earthly family could coexist together. That is the desire. That is the heart's cry of God. Is that right? I come from a family which is white and my wife is black. Well, maybe that's offensive. I don't know. It's Islander, whatever you want. I don't care. Whatever. White, black, yellow, whatever. You know, yeah, red and yellow, black and white. We're all precious in his sight. In my household, I want a house not where they say, we're black. Give me some land rights. Or I don't want them saying, stinking black fellas wouldn't work in an iron lung. Us white fellas. That's not the Father's heart. The Father's heart wants a family where everybody gets along. And we're neither white or black, but we're Smyths, where both parties come under the Father's name. That's the plan of God, and that's why we're made in the image of God, and that's why your family and my family is a picture of God, and that's why these heavenly powers which have rebelled against God are trying to destroy the family, because your marriage and your family is a picture of what God's plan is, and every time they look on your family and see that, they know that God's plan is still in play and will not be thwarted. Your marriage, your kids are up against spiritual forces that are against them. And if you're not a praying parent, you're leaving them on their own because they're in a hostile environment. And Daniel prayed, and it took 21 days to come through. I don't know how long you're going to pray for your kids. I don't know how long you're going to pray for your marriage. But I want to tell you this, that there's spiritual forces arrayed against you. And if you will not defend yourself, then you will find yourself attacked and vulnerable. We've got to wake up to where we are. I found this incredibly interesting as I delved into it. I thought, Lord, awaken me, because some of us are so dead in our prayer life. We hardly pray, we read occasionally, and we wonder why all hell breaks loose. You think this is a neutral environment. It's not a neutral environment. And there's powerful forces out there that are arrayed against us. We need Jesus. We need Jesus. Okay, that's enough for today. So what we're going to do going forward, next week, I'll be preaching in Gladstone, so Phil will be here next week. The week after that, you got Peter Danzy here in the afternoon. I think it's 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So next week will be a normal church. The week after that, I'll put it on the slide for next week. The week after that, you got Pete Danzy coming in the afternoon, 3 o'clock till 5 or whatever it is. So bring afternoon tea for that. So everyone can have a cuppa, have a break in between, just to give yourself some respite. And then we're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to look at the rebellion, the 3 rebellions of the heavenly host. And then we're going to have a look at what Jesus actually accomplished when his way to the cross. Then we're going to have a look at what Jesus did in his resurrection. Then we're going to see what the plan and purposes of God is and how the authority of God rests in us. We're going to see these things expelled and the scriptures will open up that the things that Jesus did was not just for our realm, not just for our benefits, but he is interested in both families. And we'll see what unravels with that. So anyway, I hope you don't think I'm a heretic. That's what I see from the scriptures in the unseen realm. And if you don't believe it, no problem.